My wife sent me a text at 11:14 inches the morning on a Tuesday in October. I've spoken with a financial advisor. I'm moving forward with the account transfer. Don't make this difficult. That was it. No punctuation after the last sentence. No explanation of which account, which advisor, which direction she intended to move forward. Just that instruction at the end, the way you'd remind someone to take out the trash. I read it twice standing in the parking lot of my cardiologist's office. The October wind off the harbor pushing through my coat like it had somewhere more important to be. My follow-up had gone well. Blood pressure stable, the arrhythmia quiet, the new medication doing exactly what it was supposed to do. I had been in a decent mood for the first time in weeks. I typed back 2 words, already handled. I put the phone in my pocket and drove downtown. By 2 that afternoon, I had 9 missed calls. By 6, the number was 16. I did not answer any of them. My wife and I had been married for 22 years. She was sharp when I met her. A woman who could walk into any room and immediately understand its architecture, social or otherwise. She had that quality some people carry like a natural frequency, the ability to make whoever she was speaking to feel briefly like the most important person in the world. I admired it when we were young. It had taken me longer than I would like to admit to understand that the same skill can be used in multiple directions. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years in commercial real estate finance, the structural side, the part most people find tedious, asset protection, holding entities, trust layering, succession planning. I was not dramatic about it. I simply believed that what you build deserves to be protected with the same care it took to build it. My father had lost everything at 54 when his business partner filed fraudulent documents. I watched it happen slowly and then all at once, and I decided very early that I would never find myself unprotected by my own inattention. 6 months before that Tuesday in October, I had a cardiac event. Nothing catastrophic. A serious arrhythmia during a morning run, a brief hospitalization, a significant adjustment to how I live my daily life. My wife was present for the first 2 days. By the third, she had resumed her social schedule. I did not hold that against her initially. People handle fear differently, and I had always been the contained one in our marriage, the one who processed quietly, who did not require witnesses to his recovery. What I noticed in the weeks that followed was more subtle. She stopped asking about my appointments. She began making references to the future in the singular, small grammatical shifts that I caught and filed away without comment. She started taking calls in other rooms. She began spending time with a man she described as a developer, someone she had met through her professional network, a name she mentioned casually and then less casually as the weeks went on. His name was not important. What was important was the pattern. 3 weeks before that Tuesday in October, I hired a forensic accountant, not because I was certain, because the numbers didn't feel right. And in my experience, when numbers don't feel right, they rarely are. My attorney's name is Patricia Lund. She has handled my financial and estate matters for 11 years. She is methodical in the way a surgeon is methodical, not cold, but deeply uninterested in anything that is not precise. I was sitting across from her at 3:30 that afternoon with a printed summary from the forensic accountant and my phone face down on her desk. She read through the summary without expression. She attempted a beneficiary change on the annuity in September, Patricia said, not looking up. Filed but not processed. The carrier flagged it for my signature, and she initiated a wire authorization on the joint brokerage account. Also flagged. The bank called me. I was in cardiology. Patricia set the document down. She thought you wouldn't notice. She thought a lot of things. Patricia leaned back. What exactly does she believe she has access to? I opened the folder I had brought with me and slid a single page across the desk. It was a trust registration document filed 8 years ago, the Caldwell Structured Asset Trust, irrevocable, with a layered beneficiary structure and a corporate trustee designation that predated our last significant joint financial conversation by several years. Patricia studied it for a moment. She doesn't know. She has never been interested in structures. She was interested in outcomes. The retirement accounts, transferred into the trust 8 years ago. The brokerage accounts followed 2 years later. What she believes she can access is a joint checking account and 2 personal lines of credit, both of which I closed last week citing inactivity. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, so she is attempting to transfer assets she does not own, with the assistance of someone who presumably told her she could? Who is he? A developer named Marcus Webb, mid-50s. 2 failed project launches in the past 3 years. His most recent venture, a mixed-use conversion in the Pearl District, is approximately $400,000 underwater on a private bridge note. He has been negotiating an extension for 90 days. Patricia looked at me carefully. And who holds the note? As of last Thursday, I do. She was quiet again. You purchased his debt through an intermediary, a clean transaction, legal in every respect, before she filed the wire authorization. Yes. Patricia exhaled slowly and picked up her pen. She thinks she is liquidating your assets to fund a relocation. Portland. She filed a change of address with the post office 6 weeks ago, and she does not know that the assets she is targeting belong to the trust. No. Or that the man she is trying to rescue now owes you. Not yet. Patricia set her pen down. This is not revenge. No, I said. It is correction. My phone buzzed on the desk. I turned it over briefly. 19 missed calls. I turned it face down again. There is a particular kind of clarity that comes when you have been preparing for something you hoped would never happen. It is not satisfaction. It is not grief. It is the sensation of a structure holding under pressure, of knowing the load-bearing walls are exactly where you put them. I had not wanted this. I want to be precise about that. I had spent 6 months after my hospitalization trying to understand what had shifted in our marriage, whether the distance I felt was temporary or structural, whether what I was observing was fear on her part or calculation. I had given her time. I had given her space. I had watched carefully, the way I always watched, and what I saw was a woman who had looked at my diminished health and made a financial decision. That was not grief. That was not fear. That was a balance sheet. Patricia prepared 4 documents that afternoon. A formal notice to the title company regarding any pending transfers involving Caldwell Structured Asset Trust property. A letter to the brokerage and annuity carrier confirming that no beneficiary changes or wire authorizations were to be processed without written trustee approval. A notice of dispute filed with the county recorder, and a demand letter to Marcus Webb as the new note holder, requiring updated financial disclosure within 72 hours. I left her office at 5:45 and sat in my car for a moment with the phone still face down on the passenger seat. 23 missed calls now. I drove home to the house we had shared for 14 years, poured myself a glass of water, and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the garden she had designed and that I had quietly maintained for the past 5 months while she stopped noticing it. The light was failing over the ridge. The Douglas firs across the back fence were going dark from the top down. When my wife came home at 7:12, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and nothing on it. She stopped in the doorway when she saw me. You didn't answer, she said. I know. She set her bag on the counter carefully. She was dressed well, the way she always dressed when she had been somewhere important to her. We need to talk. All right. She sat across from me. Her posture was the posture I recognized from 22 years, composed in the way that was not quite natural, the composure that required maintenance. I've been managing a lot, she said, since your episode. I've been carrying things without acknowledgement, without support, without any sense of what our future actually looks like. I understand that, I said. She seemed surprised I didn't argue. I've made some decisions, practical ones. I think it's time for us to restructure how we handle our finances independently and to be honest about where we are. I agree. Another pause. She was watching me now the way people watch a surface they can't quite read. I've already spoken to someone. About the accounts. Marcus Webb. The name landed in the room like a stone in still water. Her expression shifted. Not collapsed, shifted. How do you know that name? The same way I know about Portland. The same way I know about the wire authorization request and the beneficiary change attempt in September. Her hands, folded on the table, tightened. You've been surveilling me. I've been paying attention. That's not the same thing. Her voice found an edge. You've been withdrawing for months. You stopped talking about our future. You move things without consulting me. You make decisions alone and then act surprised when I respond in kind. I restructured the trust 2 years before my cardiac event. Before any of this, she stared at me. What trust? The Caldwell Structured Asset Trust. Established 8 years ago, the retirement accounts have been held there since 2016. The brokerage accounts since 2018. I paused. What you asked Marcus Webb to help you access does not belong to us jointly. It has not for 8 years. It belongs to the trust. The color in her face changed. It was not dramatic. It was the particular quality of blood pressure dropping, of a plan encountering its first structural failure. That's not possible. You can verify it with Patricia Lunn's office in the morning. You can't just transfer marital assets into a trust without my knowledge. The assets in question were mine prior to our marriage. The trust predates your name on any of our joint accounts. Patricia can walk you through the documentation if that would be helpful. She pushed back from the table. You set this up. I built something and protected it. That is not the same thing. You knew. Her voice rose. You knew what I was doing, and you let me. I watched what you were doing, I said quietly, because I needed to understand who you are when you believe I am not watching. She stood up and walked to the window. I waited. Marcus needed help, she said finally, her voice lower now. The project was failing. The lender was threatening to take everything. I thought if we could liquidate some of the investment accounts, just enough to cover the note, he could refinance and we could. You could what? She didn't answer immediately. You could leave, I said, not harshly, as a statement of fact. Her shoulders dropped slightly. I wasn't happy. I haven't been happy. After your episode, everything felt like waiting. Like I was just waiting for something worse to happen. And Marcus was, she stopped. Present, I said. Yes. Optimistic. Yes. And in significant financial difficulty that your cooperation could solve. She turned around. That's not fair. It is accurate. She looked at me with something that I had not seen clearly before that moment. Not love and not hate. Something closer to recognition. The way you look at a house you have lived in for a long time and suddenly understand its true dimensions. You're not angry, she said. I was, I replied, for about 3 days in August when the forensic accountant delivered his first report. After that, I was just clear. She sat back down slowly. What does that mean? Clear. It means I know what happened and I know what needs to happen next. The meeting at Patricia's office 2 days later was not dramatic. My wife arrived with her own attorney, a younger man named Garrett who carried himself with the careful energy of someone who had not yet learned to read a room. Marcus Webb did not appear. He had received the demand letter the previous morning, and according to Patricia's contact at his office, he had spent the afternoon making calls and the evening canceling them. Garrett opened with the predictable position. His client had been operating under the reasonable assumption that marital assets were jointly accessible. Any transfer attempt was made in good faith based on incomplete financial disclosure on my part. Patricia let him finish. Then she placed the trust documents, the original filing, the subsequent transfers, and the county recorder confirmation on the table in a single clean stack. Garrett reviewed them for several minutes. His client watched the table. The structure is valid, he said finally. Yes, Patricia agreed. And the beneficiary change attempt. Filed without authorization and flagged by the carrier. It was not processed. The wire request. Similarly flagged, not executed. Garrett looked at his client. Something passed between them that I did not need to interpret. What is your client seeking? He said. Patricia folded her hands. Dissolution of the marriage, uncontested. Full financial disclosure for the period covering the past 18 months. A written acknowledgement of the unauthorized financial actions, and a formal release of any claim against Caldwell Structured Asset Trust. And the debt? Garrett said, glancing at the secondary documents. Mr. Webb's note. Mr. Webb's obligations are his own, I said. I will honor the original terms of the instrument. No acceleration, no harassment. He pays what he signed for. Garrett looked at me with the slight surprise of someone expecting a different kind of opponent. That's generous. It is contractual, I said. Nothing more. My wife had not spoken since she sat down. She was looking at the trust documents, the dates, the filing history, the careful architecture of something built long before this room and this table and this version of our lives. You weren't declining, she said quietly. It was not addressed to anyone in particular. No, you were protecting yourself. I was protecting what I built. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. I thought you had stopped caring about the future. I had started caring about it more carefully. Garrett touched her arm lightly. She looked at him, then back at me. I was afraid, she said. I know. That's not enough for you. Fear explains, I said. It doesn't change what happened. She picked up the pen. Her hand was steady, which I respected. She signed everything on the first pass, not quickly, but without hesitation. The way someone signs who has already made the decision and is simply completing the form. Garrett collected the documents. Patricia nodded once in my direction. My phone was on the table. I looked at it briefly. 26 missed calls, all from the first 2 days. She had stopped calling after our conversation at the kitchen table. Silence after that. Real silence. The thing about building something over decades is that its value is only partly financial. The structure matters, because the structure is what remains when everything surrounding it changes. Relationships change. Markets shift. Health declines and recovers, and declines again. What holds is what was built with intention. The foundations that were laid when no one was watching, when there was no crisis requiring them, when building them felt like unnecessary caution. My father lost his business at 54. He never recovered financially, and the damage to his sense of himself was worse than the money. I had watched that process and understood it as a warning, not about other people's greed, but about the gap between assumption and documentation. My father had assumed, he had shaken hands and trusted silently, and believed that the shared history of a partnership was its own kind of legal protection. It is not. I moved into a smaller house in January, a craftsman on a quiet street 3 blocks from the harbor, 2 bedrooms, a study with south-facing windows, a garden that was completely overgrown and completely mine. I spent the first 3 weekends cutting it back to its structure, the actual bones of what someone had planted 40 years ago before the neglect, and I found that it was well designed underneath. Good bones. That is almost always the first thing worth looking for. The divorce finalized in February. Straightforward, as Patricia had anticipated. My wife retained what was legally hers under the terms of our marriage. The trust was untouched. The retirement accounts remained intact. The joint accounts had held enough for a reasonable settlement, and I did not argue for less than what was fair, even when Garrett suggested I might. Marcus Webb made his first payment on the note in March. On time, full amount, no communication attached. I noted it in the ledger and said nothing. On a Wednesday evening in early spring, I received a voicemail. I did not recognize the number at first. When I played the message, I recognized the voice immediately. I know I have no reason to call. A pause. The sound of weather somewhere on her end, wind or traffic. I just needed to say it clearly. I was wrong. What I did was wrong. Not confused or complicated. Wrong. Another pause. Marcus left for Denver 2 weeks after the filing. The project is still underwater. I don't say that to ask for anything. I say it because I think I believed his version of things when it was convenient, and I want you to know I understand that now. I listened to the message twice, standing at the kitchen sink with the harbor visible through the window, the evening light going copper on the water. You asked me once, early on, what I wanted from our life together. I said stability. I meant it then. I just eventually decided stability meant something different than you did. I thought it meant a fixed outcome. You built it to mean a protected foundation. The message ended. I stood there for a moment. The harbor did not require anything from me. The light continued moving without my participation. I did not call back. Not because of bitterness, because some doors when they close are closed correctly, and reopening them is not a gift to either person, only a postponement of the same ending. I put the phone in my pocket and walked out to the garden. The roses I had uncovered in January were beginning to come back, slow and serious, the way things return when they have been properly tended. The light held for another hour. I worked in it without hurrying. That evening I sat in the study with a cup of tea and the trust documents spread across the desk, not because I needed to review them, but because there is a particular kind of satisfaction in looking at something you built and finding it exactly where you left it. Every asset accounted for. Every protection still intact. The structure holding the way a structure should, quietly, without drama, simply present. I thought about what my wife had said at the kitchen table that night in October, that I had stopped talking about the future, that I had been withdrawing. I had not been withdrawing. I had been doing what I had always done, working in the quiet, building in the background, preparing for things I hoped would never arrive, but understanding that hope is not a foundation. In 31 years of finance, I had learned one consistent truth. The people who suffer most are not the ones who failed to care. They are the ones who cared deeply and trusted that caring was enough. It is not enough. Care without structure is sentiment. Sentiment does not protect you in a conference room. It does not file itself with the county recorder. It does not hold under the weight of someone else's desperation. I am not a cold man. I want to be clear about that. I loved my wife for 22 years, and I believe she loved me for most of them, and I believe the fear she described at that kitchen table was real. Fear is real. It is also, in the end, not an excuse for the choices made in its shadow. You are still accountable for the shape of your fear. A few weeks later, I received a text from an unknown number. One sentence. Mr. Caldwell, the refinancing came through. I'll be current on the note as agreed. I read it once. Then I typed back, good. Honor the schedule. That's all I need. I set the phone down on the desk next to the trust documents and looked out the window at the garden. The harbor beyond it. The last of the evening light moving across the water like something unhurried and purposeful. I had not won anything. That framing had never interested me. What I had done was what I had always done. Prepared the ground, built the structure, maintained the foundation, while no one was watching. And when the moment came that required the structure to hold, it held. Not because of luck. Not because of some late-arrived heroism. Because I had built it before I needed it. There is a kind of strength that does not announce itself. It does not raise its voice. It does not require an audience to perform its function. It simply exists, organized and intact, exactly where it was placed, waiting with complete patience for the moment when it is called upon. I had spent decades building that kind of strength in my professional life. The cardiac event had frightened me in ways I had not fully acknowledged. Not the arrhythmia itself, but what came after. The particular vulnerability of recovery. The strange diminishment of trusting your own body less than you had the day before. I had pulled inward. I can admit that now. Not because I had stopped caring about the future, but because I was temporarily uncertain which future I was building toward. My wife read that uncertainty as decline. She was wrong, but I understand why. People reveal what they expect when they are afraid. She expected me to dissolve. She had calculated her next move around that expectation. The expectation was incorrect. If you have ever been underestimated, if someone looked at your silence and mistook it for surrender, if someone assumed that your stillness was weakness rather than preparation, I would ask you to consider something simple. Silence is not the absence of a response. Sometimes it is the response. Sometimes the most complete thing you can say is nothing, while you are building something that will speak for itself when the moment arrives. Build the trust before you need it. Know where every document is filed. Understand exactly what you have signed and exactly what it means. Do not assume that history protects you. Structure protects you. And if someone ever tells you that what you built no longer belongs to you, that they have already handled it, that there is nothing left to check, I hope you will do what I did. Pause, and then handle it yourself. If this story meant something to you, if you have ever had to protect something you built from someone who forgot to respect it, I would like to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you are watching from. If you want more stories about quiet strength, about boundaries built before they are needed, and about what it looks like to walk away with your foundation intact, subscribe. We are just getting started.